Welcome to the Aligned Life Podcast by yours truly, Dr. Tiffany. How about we get out that magnifying glass and look at every part of your life? The awesome, the suck, and everything in between. There's so much beauty in you. Stop being afraid of what isn't good enough and let's double down on what is together. It's about your truth and your life, aligned. Today's about Millionaire Mindset. First of all, I'm Dr. Tiffany, chiropractor, owner at Healing Touch Chiropractic in West Fargo, founder, CEO of the Unleashed Life, which is this. It's this training, it's coaching, it's mentoring, it's strategy, it's all the things to help you get to whatever it is that you want. Keyword, whatever it is that you want, not what your Joe Blow around you wants, okay? The Millionaire Mindset. Sometimes this can totally trigger you. If it triggers you, we got to work through some money barriers because usually it's the millionaire part. I am going to touch on money probably all the way through because most of us grow up in a space of not talking about it and kind of just keeping it under wraps. Yet we have all these objections and we have all these things that happen. And as they continue to happen, they continue to affect our life. But until we are aware of them, we don't even know that it's the same subconscious thought patterning. When we talk about mindset, we're going to talk about the brain. We're going to talk about mind, visualization, things that help you get out of the right now hamster wheel. My first experience with visualization was so powerful that I couldn't even say that it didn't work or whatever it was. I was in chiropractic school. I was 2/3 of the way through. Had a 2.5-year-old, had a baby on the way. We were in the final class in school before we went to our preceptorship or externship. And we started doing this visualization exercise on what kind of practice you want. Like, how do you want your next stage of life to be? And so it was a quiet activity. First, it was breathing, eyes closed, visualizing what you see. So everything from the building, from the outside of it to the inside of it, what you see in walls and colors and flow and people, what you smell, what kind of environment are you creating? What does it look like? How do you want people to feel when they come in? How do you want them to feel when they're driving in? What does it look like? Everything. And I had pages, I had drawings, I had trees, I had everything. And so I drew a red building, which was in open land. It was a long, windy road up to it. It was surrounded by trees. And when I looked out the windows, I saw nature. I didn't see hustle bustle. I just didn't want to see hustle bustle. I wanted people to have an experience of, maybe it's only 5 minutes in their whole entire life or whole entire day that they can come in here and be somewhat calm. And so I had it all there, colors and everything. And once we decided to come to the back to the area, I had contacted a realtor back, this was 15 years ago. So everything was snail mail. So I call him, I leave a message, he calls me back and he's like, yeah, I'm just going to send you a few options in the mail. And I open up the first manila envelope that says Dr. Tiffany Johnson, because when I had a little bit of ego thinking doctor was the most important thing in the whole entire universe. And I opened up the sketch and it was a red building and it was exactly how I drew it. The long, windy road. There is not building around it. The front of it is no windows except for the tippy top. So I couldn't see the interstate. The back of it was land and trees. And I knew it. I created it. I dreamt it, so I was going to do it. And as soon as I opened it, I said, oh my gosh, Craig, I didn't tell him about the exercise in school because I kind of thought it was crazy. And I said, this seems to be where we need to go. And that was where I was. I got to build it out exactly how I envisioned it. And that's the power of your mindset. That's the power of upgrading your mindset to fit your dreams. So when you upgrade it, you think outside of your circle. So I call it 3X. It can be 10X. It can be 100X. Whatever it is needs to be beyond where you are right now. So let's break down the mind. For just simplicity purposes, I'm going to break it into two parts, conscious and subconscious. You can say conscious or unconscious too, but most experts use subconscious. Now, when we think about visualization or meditation, breath work, that is anchoring your subconscious mind, because the subconscious does what the conscious says. The conscious brain is your master, it's the captain, and the subconscious brain is the people, the ship, the whatever goes wherever the captain says to go. When you think certain things, subconscious says, okay, that's what I'm going to do. This is why mindset works. This is why retraining, repatterning, reprogramming your brain works. As a chiropractor, I can totally, oh my gosh, how many examples do I have of witnessing that it works every single freaking time? Now you add mindset work into the brain retraining and you got total magic. So when we look at thoughts become things, become beliefs, become actions, become personality, become persona, become you. So in order to rewire, you got to come right back around to thoughts. Being aware of your thoughts, being in your body so you can actually feel, see, hear your thoughts. And then once you're aware, you're like, oh, that isn't the thought I want to be thinking right now. So if we were to break down positive and negative, 20% of our thoughts are positive, 80% are negative. Surprising to some, not surprising to most. And if 80% are negative, we know that we think about, I don't know, some people say 10,000 thoughts a day, some people say 6. So let's just say 6. 4,500 of them are negative then. That's what that means. If you think 6,000 thoughts in one day, 4,500 of them are negative. Now, am I saying that we should be a positive poly? Absolutely not. Not effective, not going to work. We need to allow these thoughts to come up and to come through and recognize them and be aware of them and figure out where in the world they're coming from so that we can start to retrain our brain. If you were just to think about your most common thoughts, yesterday we talked about limits. This would be the thought within the limit. So if your limit is, I don't feel confident enough to do this, or I'm scared of failing, or I'm scared of having the conversation, or I don't believe I'm good enough, strong enough, powerful enough to do this, there's a thought that goes with that. We get to talk about creating a new reality, because once we start to change our conscious thoughts, our subconscious behavior changes. So the subconscious mind is memorized from what the conscious mind tells it. So in our day, only 2 to 5%, some people will say that, some people say 10. So let's just say 0 to 10%, up to 10% of your thoughts are conscious. The rest are subconscious. The rest is just memorized. It's just what you've always done. So when you go to the grocery store, consciously, you're not actually thinking about where to go. You know where to go, which is why sometimes we say the car just kind of drives ourselves. But we just kind of zone out because that subconscious brain knows what to do and it knows where to go. So think about that in the negative light. If all it knows when you try something new is to say you're not good enough, you're not fast enough, you're not smart enough, you can't do it, then that's what it's going to believe until you are aware of that and you hijack it and you say, absolutely not, this doesn't belong here. Just like training for a marathon, you have to train your brain, you have to train your mind for achievement, for success, for massive transformation. It doesn't just happen. And that's what the mirror is. The mirror is, I am fully responsible for this life right now. I'm not going to blame myself for how I got here, but I know that I'm responsible. And if I created it, I can change it. So thinking into you, now you're going to start noticing these 4,000 thoughts that you have a day, like, holy Hannah, because when we aren't responsible for ourselves, we're sitting in the back seat of the car. We're like, I have no idea where we are. I have no idea where we're driving. Why do we have a flat tire? Why we're out of gas? There's no responsibility anywhere. But when we get in there, we know that in order to change it, you need to do it. You need to think it. You need to be it. So coming from where I come from, without health, we don't have much. How we do one thing, we do everything. So if we have brain fog, we know that something else is foggy, right? Something else is numb, something else is withdrawn. We're avoiding something else. Think of that in terms of brain fog. The closer the issue is to the brain, the more brain stuff we're going to have, the more emotional, the more mental. So there are correlations as we bring the magnifying glass into our life. There's correlations everywhere. Headaches are probably tied to low energy, poor sleep, poor mood, not being clear, being distracted, not remembering things. Now, you may blame it on your headache, but it might not just be your headache. It's how your brain and your spine are functioning. So how do we get that gateway open? Health is super important. We can't skip over health to get to the result if that is one of the key things holding you back. And I imagine, think about those beliefs that you started to experience when you were really young, even before there were issues, before there was a stroke, before there was anything. You start noticing that you're thinking in a limited way. Or if your mom and your grandma and your sister have all had migraines and depression, when you get it, you think it's normal. So then what happens when your kids get it? You think that's normal? Hell no, that's not normal. I'm here to tell you, that's not normal. That's learned genetics. That is not normal. But what happens is when we succumb and you don't mean to, you're protecting yourself. You're like, well, I need to make sure I can get through this day. I need to make sure that I'm taking care of my family and all the things that I need to take care of. So I'm not going to stop and complain about this or think this isn't appropriate. I'm just going to suck it up. I'm going to take the med. I'm going to do the therapy. I'm going to do all the things in order to get through my day. Until that doesn't work, until those things don't get you through your day and you are at this point of, I want something more. But if we're skipping over the health part, you might not totally get there because that's part of the limitation. So it's maybe not only the brain fog, but it's like all the things that I mentioned that go along with brain fog. And when we're not doing what we'd love to do, where we know we are supposed to be, when we feel broke and when we feel lack, we feel that everywhere. So you feel that in your health, you feel that in your relationships, you feel that in your work, you feel that in the depth of connection. Spiritually, you feel that. There's a disconnect. When we talk about mindset, think of your decisions. Think of how you think about certain things being 3 steps ahead of where you are right now or 3 steps above where you are right now, however you visualize it. So I visualize these 2 different ways all the time. I'm going to give you that so that you can kind of see. So if you're up with a decision or a situation, instead of making a decision to get out of the current situation with the same level of thinking, what would happen if you'd stretch yourself to 3 steps ahead? What would happen if that person that's 3 steps ahead looked behind and saw, hey, Tiff, if we do X, Y, Z, you're going to get out of this. Instead of making decisions in comfort zones, making decisions out of fear, out of guilt, out of resentment, out of not being accepted, not liked, what if you made them from 3 steps ahead? I just had a gal who's in our group coaching group and asked her to share her story. She wavered, and I knew she was going to waver for a few days. And she said, I finally realized that if I say no, you're not going to let me not do it anyway. So I might as well think 3 steps past where I'm at and know that my discomfort right now is calling for me to do something different than I've always done. And she is. She's doing something different than she's always done because she doesn't think her story is good enough, right? We don't think our results are good enough. We don't, all of the things. We look outside of ourselves before we look inside of ourselves. So when you start looking at yourself from a different perspective, and I call that objectivity, you start to feel like you're maybe in a different body until you're used to it. The other way that helps me is looking at yourself from the corner of a room, and that's why I say 3 steps above. However many stories you need to be above, you can do whatever you want. But when you look at yourself from the corner of a room and you're looking down on what's happening in this space right now, you start to see it less as a subjective thing. And you start to see like, oh, this is where she should go. This is what she should do. This is who she needs to be. This is what she needs to learn. Instead of doing the same thing over and over and being in that hamster wheel with trying to get out of it with the same level of thinking that got you in it. And that concept is taught in a lot of places, right? Insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. But if you don't have awareness in it, and if you don't have a tactic or a tool to help you get out of that hamster, that moment right now, you don't know what to do because you've been trained for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years to think like this. And so we're just starting to develop a concept to shift it. So I have vision, goals, and you know what would be crazy down below. What if your vision actually isn't what you've ever thought it was because you were creating that vision, I don't know, when you're 15 or when you're 25, or because that's what your husband wants, or that's what your kids say you should be, or that's what your parents thought. Your vision is your vision. Your goals are your goals. One of the most pivotal moments in your life will be when you know that you're on the same path with somebody side by side and they can converge. Nobody needs to fall off the path. We can continue to be on our own individual paths, yet we can converge and stay on that same path. And when you find those people that are on the same path, along the same journey of creating a better life, creating something extraordinary, that's when you're going to grow, because they're also going to be in a mindset 3x or 10x. And you're going to be like, holy shit, how do you think like that? Well, you will. You'll soon think like that because it takes practice to continue to retrain your brain. What would happen if you'd break through the possibility barrier and actually make that happen? But first, you have to create what could possibly be. The emotions that typically come up when we start taking control of ourselves is selfishness, greed. What will people say if I say no to this? And we learn quickly the role that we're doing right now, whether it's being a mom to toddlers, or being the boss of a multi-million-dollar company, or being the nanny. Whatever that is doesn't mean that that's who you are. And so when you go through 20 years of a bunch of different roles, that's how you've identified yourself, is all these roles, instead of who is the person behind the do? Like, who are you behind the what you're doing? That's what we are working on. That's what we're uncovering, because the decision has to happen first. And the decision is the 3X mindset. It's the like, yes, I'm going to do this for myself so that I can help my kids more. People talk about this all the time, but for most people, it doesn't make any sense. I'm going to try to do this for myself. It's still, there is not anything to move through. There's not a limiting belief you can crush. There's not a boundary, because we haven't been trained on doing any of that. Our deepest need is to love and be loved. And this is a deep concept, but the imbalance of to love and be loved many times is doing things for others at the expense of you. When I say that's a deep concept, we've all probably heard that, but we don't know how to fix it. That's what we get to continue to work on, because our need is to help others. And when I tell somebody like, all right, you got to scale it back here. We got to work on yourself first before you can take the best care of them. There's usually defiance and frustration, and they want to say F you to me, because that's what we've known. That's what we've learned from all of the people taking care of us growing up. That's what we've learned. That's what creates happiness. No, it doesn't, if you're sacrificing your whole self to do that one thing. So when you say yes to something, you need to say yes to yourself, yes to them, and you have to say no to something else. The only way the balance happens is if we have sacrifice somewhere. So let's talk about vision. Let's talk about goals. Let's talk about that in terms of 3X. Don't think so much about like what that even means. This is meant to just start to think differently. So the drama is in the how. When we start like putting a plan together and creating something, we give up because we're not sure how it should be. We're not sure how it should go. We're not sure how it should look. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Sometimes the exercise is just the exercise. So start writing down what a vision is, what your vision is. What does life look like? That's what I mean by vision. If you think of the most common areas of your life, your family, your work, your finances, your social, your spiritual, think of those 5. And what is the vision in that? What do I want? Who do I want to be? What do I want to have? What do I want to do? This is just the start to start thinking outside of what you've always known or what you've settled with. We don't settle. We don't settle for average or mediocre. If that doesn't feel good, that's your first sign. If it feels good, then we got to work on what it would feel like to not be average. And average is in the eye of your beholder. It is you. It's settling for something great. That's what that means. People will challenge, well, I like being content and I like being happy and I like being comfortable. I get that. But is that what you're supposed to be? Is there something more that you're supposed to offer yourself in the world? Write down some visions, write down some things. In a year, if I could have a lake home, in a year, if I could build a new home, in a year, if I could sell my home, if my marriage could be like this, if my relationship with my kids could be like this, if my relationship with my parents could be like this, what if I had a group of friends that were like this? What if my health were this? What if I would feel great all the time? What if I would have energy? What if I didn't have to take any medications to live or to poop or to breathe or to anything, to be happy? What if I didn't feel broke? What if I didn't feel stuck? What if I didn't feel in a job that I couldn't leave because it was giving us a good life? What if? That's where I want you to go for your vision. And goals are a little bit more scaled back. So like I said, the drama is in the how. Goal is more of a step-by-step way to get there. What do I need to do to get the most out of where I'm at right now? Some people will straight up have blocks, like not able to even think about what it would be like because it makes them feel totally guilty and resentful and having regret that you're not happy with what you have right now. You totally are. And that gratitude is what will help you see, like, but what if I could get over this next fear? What if I could get over this next speed bump? Imagine what could open up in my world. Imagine what could positively change. Imagine how I could positively change our family and our community and everybody around us. So anyway, this conversation came up last week or the week before, a strong conversation about why is contentment bad? And so when I think of contentment, I think of comfort zones. I think of secure. I think of stable. I think of certain. It doesn't mean that parts of our life don't need to be that. But in this case, that's what that meant. And so feeling content to her was happy, and she wants more happy because the level of incongruence in her life makes us be more disconnected to who we really are. So that's what that means. Who you are showing up as right now is different than who you know you actually are. And now we get to work on the gap. We need to decrease the bigness of this gap so that we're starting to show up more as you. You're stuck because something is out of resonance. You're not aligned. There's barriers, there's beliefs, there's all the things that we just continue to say, just keep going, adrenaline, right? And then you're like, holy crap, but I don't feel peace anymore. I can't even talk myself into peace or gratitude or safety or happiness. It just doesn't even feel right. And that's the T in the road. When that happens, that means you're ready to get in the driver's seat of that car. And that's how we continue to grow. Once you work through that one, that limit, that boundary, that barrier, as you continue to grow, then you have others. But pretty soon you've trained your mind and your behaviors on how to get through them, and that they're meant for us to grow more, not to slow down, not to constrict. They're meant for expansion. They're meant for lessons. This next one is the you know what would be crazy list. And this is the most important out of all of them. This is the impossible list. What if I had no short-term or long-term debt? What if I had a marriage that was above and beyond anything I could imagine? What if I started my own nonprofit that has been my dream for 20 years? What if I was a best-selling author? What if I started using my gifts in XYZ to do 1, 2, 3? The big stuff, the impossible stuff. Some of you may be able to write 3 things down, and you might not be able to start. And some of you can write 15 things down. Now, when we look at dreaming, it's not an act of just dreaming and putting it on paper, because what happens when we get some of those dreams down on paper is your actions in the day start to become different. Your thoughts start to become different because you start to think past. It's kind of like shoot for the moon, and if you miss, you'll land among the stars. I think that's how that goes. But that's the same idea. What if this could actually happen? How would my life change? Who would I be? Who do I need to be to do this? Is then the next step. But for right now, it is the big stuff. And that big stuff isn't meant for you to sit crisscross applesauce on the floor and do this and just hope and pray that it happens. because action is the next thing. You have to take action on the little things to get you there. The thoughts, fears, the decisions, the risk, reward, all those things. You need to learn more about you. Who are you in your personality? By the way, personalities can change. Balanced and imbalanced personalities are a thing. So if you fill out a bunch of personality tests and you're like, I don't know, I feel like I'm a chameleon all the way through, that means you're probably the most incongruent in everything, mildly. Does that make sense? You're not stuck and grounded. You could fill out one personality test and you're one way and another in another way. That likely means that you're different in different areas of your life. So your work persona is this and your personal persona is this. That would be an identity complex. What happens when that happens? What happens when who you are is just totally stuck in one area? That's identifying you more. And that person will start to become more evident as you start to dream and see who needs to be. Who do I need to be to actually achieve that thing? Where do I need to upgrade my health? Where do my habits need to change? Am I doing happy hour every night and I can't think in the morning? Well, that could be brain fog. Where do my relationships need to change or upgrade? How can I take care of my health so that I have energy to maybe work on a hobby that could be something more later? What do I need to learn to be a better leader, to be a better manager, to be a better organizer, to be a better preparer of my life, not just the day? When you start to break through your beliefs of how life should be, you start to land among the stars. Then you start to do things that are way beyond what you even thought were possible. That's also why I talk about circle of influence. That's why I talk about your people. Because if your people don't think the same way and act the same way, that's a tough road. If you don't have mentors or coaches that are pushing you through where you're at to get to where you're going, it's a tougher road. If you don't have somebody that can help you be accountable, accountability buddies, that's my friend's word, not mine. That's a really cool word though. Accountability buddy, that supports you and you can be part of that dream and now create the roadmap. That's irreplaceable. And the opposite is also true. If you have the people that are the Debbie Downer anchors, think of what an anchor does. If you were to hook an anchor onto your foot and jump in the lake, that's sunk. That's what they do to you. Now, is that their fault? Absolutely not. Your responsibility to choose who you want to spend time with. It's your responsibility to choose, do I have a boundary right here? Do I need to speak my boundary? Probably yes. Do I need to hold the line for this boundary? Yes. So then we start to get better at who we are instead of the blame, the shame, these people aren't that good for me. It's not about that. It's recognizing it and then pulling the mirror back up and saying, yeah, well, I was one of those people. Now I don't want the result that I've been getting. So now I'm looking at, where do I need to improve? How does my thinking need to change? So my thoughts, actions, beliefs, personality, persona, and life can go in a different direction, go in a greater direction, go in a stronger, more aligned direction. Looking at reflection, I want you to, one of the best tips that I still do, I have pieces of paper and journals everywhere in my house, like on my nightstand. I think a lot in my car and I think a lot in the shower. So I have notebooks there. I have notebooks in the bathroom, both bathrooms, actually all bathrooms, all three bathrooms, in the kitchen and here. And I have them at work also. And I call it puke on paper. So anything that needs to come out of your mind, you need to write down so it comes out of your subconscious and conscious brain. This is what you're going to think. Ooh, I shouldn't write that down. That was not very nice to say. All right, well, that's fair. But it's a lot better to write it down and then rip it up versus speak it accidentally. And that's what puke on paper does. I don't know. Some people call it different. It's totally puking for me. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I was thinking all these things. I kind of like her. I didn't mean to say all those bad things about her. It's not about that. It's about getting it out of your brain, downloading it into something, onto something so that you can let it go and release it. Doesn't mean that it won't come back to some degree. It might, but that's a practice. That's not oh my gosh, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I should go do this one time. It will still help you one time, but beyond that, it's going to help you a lot more if you make it a practice one time a week, or whenever you're feeling full or negative or crabby or nothing is good. Start free flow writing. And when you free flow write, just as a tip, you can see your handwriting change. When it's like a download, your hand can't even keep up because it's trying to get all of these thoughts on this piece of paper. That is truly getting things out of your brain, heart, gut, and onto paper. That's the action of starting to release. So puke on paper, get some paper in some spots. Some people will say, oh, is a computer okay or a phone? It is okay. The act of writing from your brain through your hand is part of that healing process, because everything that we feel sits in our body. Everything that we feel sits in our cells. So it just becomes us. Now you get the choice of stopping that pattern, and then we get to rewire the brain. Now we get to jump through the fear and create that life that we want. And surprise, surprise, you will likely achieve quite a few things on that what would be crazy list. So if you achieve those things, imagine how many things you're going to achieve in the vision and goals, just being 3x ahead of where you're at right now, or 3x above where you're at right now. We have a right and wrong thing in our heart or in our gut or in our mind when we're not totally confident, or we don't have that self-esteem that says, this is what I'm going to do. I don't care who sees this list on my wall. I don't need to hide from this list. I don't need to hide from all the things that I feel just to look like I got my shit together every second of every day, because you don't. You absolutely don't. And the more we cover it up on a chronic basis, I don't mean the fake it till you make it, but the more you fake it, the more you're fake. And now you don't even know who's underneath that identity. It's one of the biggest things that I ever went through, was who I was in all the areas of my life, until I realized I am just me, and I do these things and I am these things, but me needs to show up in all of them. So I don't feel like a fraud. So I don't feel like I'm someone different than I am at work versus personal. When we become that role model with confidence, with self-esteem, deserved of all the things that need to happen because you did the freaking work. When we become that, we train our kids to be that. We train our community members to be that. We train everybody that we volunteer with to be that, because we are that. And when you become that, you start to change everyone else around you without knowing you are. So my hope for you is that you get to see who that person is, or that you get to just decide that that person is worth it. And it's a process. It's not a destination. It's not going through this and checking through, yep, I wrote all my key takeaways in my notes and I put this list on the wall and I just filled in some things and now I'm done. What's next tomorrow? Because this continues to go. This continues to change at whatever level you're at wherever you are in your life. So never stop. And I think that's one of the biggest things is when you refuse to settle, you will achieve. And you will become that human that you're the most proud of. And you will let go of that incongruency gap, because there is no gap. You're showing straight up as you every day, all day. And when you're off, you know how to get back on. You know how to release. You know how to work through that limit, that fear, that barrier. Because we always are going to have them, guys. We're always going to have them. But it's your responsibility to stay in tune with your body to know what it's telling you. It takes a lot of courage to just show up, number one. When you enter in, when you can see yourself in these stories is when the magic starts to happen, because you're then in the driver's seat with the gas pedal, the brake pedal, and the steering wheel. You're the decision maker. You get to not blame anyone else around you. Growth is hard, and growth is effing scary sometimes. But if we know that we are around the people that have done it, that do it, that can continue to help you do it so you don't fall flat on your face, so the world doesn't come crushing down on you, that you can start to rework that, what's the worst thing that could happen question, that your next path is to move through that resistance, to be honest with yourself and move through it. After that, you can't control the results. So thank you. Love you. Bye. Thank you for listening and following the Aligned Life podcast with Dr. Tiffany.
If you love this and can think of anyone who needs to hear about it, would you mind sharing with them? Find me online at drtiffanyjohnson.com, where you can find out more about my memberships, courses, mentoring, and any upcoming events. To learn more about chiropractic for you and your family, go to htchiro.com and follow our social pages. I can't wait to connect with you soon, and until then, be you, be aligned.